comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Out of the box, thrown in front and tapped home. Connor McDavid has hit 50. Barron, 5, Hughes, backhand, he's out.
Welcome to another episode of the Dump and Change Show, an NHL betting show hosted by myself, Jonny Lazarus, and my good friend Keith Kavanaugh. As you can see, I am, Freddie versus Jason right now. I'm kind of struggling to speak and just make movements with my face, but we're grinding through it. I was day to day with a sunburn, but I'm here. It's been a while since I've talked to you, Keith. I feel like it's been a month, but I think it's only been a week. Took a nice weekend off to get a little R&R before the playoffs start. We're going to be grinding here the next couple months, trying to give you all the best bets, make some money. As you can see, those numbers down low on the bottom of the screen are not what we want them to be, but we both hit our best bets last night. And before I ramble on any further, Keith, I'm going to hand it off to you. What's going on? We're back in the win column.
I know we're back in the win column, a little 2-0 night. I'm glad you got to take some load management. Some pre-trade some pre-trade deadline roster holdout, but you're back. You're not rested, but at least you're back on the saddle today, which is nice to see. And yeah, like you mentioned, best bets went 2-0 last night. I was trying to maintain over the weekend while you said it was an off weekend, even though I was blowing up the chat, and you're just like, basically go fuck yourself. You can handle it. So
I want to touch on
handle
that
it.
Motherfuckers texted me. I'm like, Keith, 1, I don't have any sports books in Florida, and 2, I told you a million times I'm taking this weekend off. And every day you're texting me your best bet. I don't have one.
That's exactly what my plan was. And what did I do? I carried the squad. We're 4-1 in our last 5, up 2.17 units. And the boys are just buzzing. We're less than 2 weeks away from the playoffs. We're not going to have an episode this Friday because as the regular season kind of winds down, it's tough to really handicap when all these teams are resting players and the teams that are on the bottom of the standings are putting players on IR. So it's tough to bet on those. So we're just going to do one episode a week until playoffs and then gear back up for the playoffs. But yeah, we're excited to get this thing back on track.
That is for sure. And playoff hockey, I think, I don't know if you feel this way, but it's my bread and butter when it comes to winning money. I feel like I've always profited in the last couple of years from playoff hockey. I think a lot of it, and I don't want to say, it's good to bet with your gut, but a lot of playoff hockey betting is gut feeling, right? Like you watch these series, you watch these teams go at it every single night, and you somewhat get a sense of a vibe for how either team's playing, and you see how they match up against one another. So I actually do have a quick story. I think last year for the Leafs Lightning series, I think I went 0-4 in the first 4 games of that series. That was the one where I just couldn't figure out which team was going to show up each night. I think I bet Tampa game 1 just I thought Toronto had all the pressure, and then Toronto came out and smoked Tampa in game 1 like 6-0 or 5-0, and then it was all downhill from there. But we should have a lot of fun betting throughout the playoffs. But like he said, the next couple weeks are just going to be a little bit tough. So please bear with us. But anything else you want to talk about before we kind of get into the slate coming up?
Yeah, we could just talk about maybe best bets last night. I think we obviously went 2-0. You had the Predators under 2.5 goals, and they lost 5-1 in Dallas. The Dallas Stars looked incredible, and that leads into my best bet too, which was Robertson assist, which he hit in the first 5 minutes, which is something we love to see. You don't even have to sweat the rest of the game. You're just hanging out for the next 55 minutes, wondering what's going on. He had 1 goal and 3 assists, 4 points. He now has 100 points on the season. We're at a point in the season where we could potentially have 5 50-goal scorers and 12 players who have over 100 points this season, which is absolutely incredible. We love to see the NHL scoring rates are up the most I think they've been in like the last 15 to 20 years. I saw a tweet, so that's great to see. And yeah, I think it's just we're hitting stride and we're getting ready for playoffs, and we're seeing a lot of scoring in this league.
I mean, I still can't believe that Connor McDavid has 146 points. Like, that is just absurd.
That's
Also,
Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky level, which has not happened, in the last 25, 30 years. So it's just awesome to see.
And I think I tweeted it last week, but it's kind of been somewhat of a conversation around the league. But Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 97 points right now, arguably the quietest, what could be a 100-point season, I think, in the history of the NHL.
I mean, when you have Leon and McDavid both over 100 points already, and then you get Nugent Hopkins, who his career high is like, I think it was like 70, maybe 60, it's like
69.
high 60s, low 70s. Yeah, nice.
69.
And then he just like casually is getting 100 points this year. And I've seen some comparisons with the Rangers and Lafreniere, former first-round pick, hasn't really hit his stride yet. Whatever.
You saw the comparison from me. I tweeted it.
But yeah, no, I think that's exciting. Mikko Rantanen, we're going to go into him a little bit later, but he might have the quietest 50-goal season of all time as well.
And speaking of the Oilers, that division as a whole, the Pacific Division right now is really ramping up. I actually just want to ask you, out of the three teams, who do you think comes away with the division?
Well, if we're going to look at how the teams are trending right now, I kind of lean Edmonton just because they're 9-0-1 in their last 10 games. However, if you look at Vegas and LA, Vegas is 7-1-2 in their last 10 games, and LA is 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. So not only are all these teams really close together, but they're also just streaking at the right times of the season. So I think it's going to be crazy to see which team wins that division and gets to avoid the second and third place team in that first round, which I think all three teams are gunning for because none of these three teams want to play each other in the first round, and then you're going to have one of these teams sent home. So I think it's going to be a tough division. It's going to be a tight division. I lean Edmonton just because the star
That's what I
power.
was
You have
gonna
three
say.
guys that can get 100 points, but then the back end with Matthias Ekholm, that trade deadline move, it really stabilized their back end. And Stuart Skinner has looked great in goal for them and just signed a 3-year extension at a reasonable AAV. So I think I like Edmonton.
Jack Campbell cannot play in that in the playoffs. I have no faith in him at all. I think they need to play Stuart Skinner, and I don't know what he can do in the playoffs, but I just know the answer is not Jack Campbell.
I feel bad for Jack Campbell too because he's like a universally loved teammate. I was watching the Maple Leafs Amazon series,
He
Soupy. They
walks his
love the
cat.
yeah, they love that guy, and he's just a good person. But he has had a rough go of it in Edmonton. It is only his first year of the 5-year deal, so you're hoping next year he can pick it up. But for this playoff series, you have to ride with Stuart Skinner unless he gets shelled maybe the first 2 games and you make a switch.
I completely agree, and it's going to be really fun to watch the Oilers play in the playoffs. I mean, we got a good sample size last year, and they just came up short in the conference final. Obviously, they met their match with Colorado, who just didn't seem like they were going to lose to anyone. But this year, who knows? I mean, I've kind of been sleeping on the Oilers because of their goaltending situation, but it could happen.
You just mentioned Colorado. Let's transition a little bit into that division. Those three teams are insanely close in the standings. You have Minnesota and Dallas tied at the top, and then you have Colorado 2 points behind with 2 games in hand. That division is also just completely up for grabs. And it's interesting because everyone was hyping up the East. You got the 5-6 best teams all year in the Eastern Conference. And now you're looking at the West, and you're like, wow, there's a lot of good teams in the West. They're streaking at the right time of the year. You have some teams in the East that are kind of on the downtrend a little bit, with Carolina maybe leading that charge just with the Svechnikov injury. So I think it's going to be interesting to see who makes it out of this division as well. And similar to the Pacific, whoever gets second and third, they don't want to play each other. They want to try and get that first spot and maybe take on Seattle or the wild card between the Jets and the Flames. So I'm going to turn it to you and ask you the same question you just asked me. Who do you think takes care of business in the Central and gets that 1 seed for the playoffs?
So I actually had a futures bet on the Stars, but I actually kind of wimped out and cashed out because I got scared that Colorado was going to catch up, which I think they still will because they have 2 games in hand. They're 2 points back. I think the Avs are going to come away with that. And the Avs are a team that I'm probably going to talk about tonight because they're playing the San Jose Sharks, which should be an easy win for them. But I have to imagine right now with an Avalanche team that's getting healthier and healthier, and they're looking really strong in their last 10. They're 8-2-0 in their last 10 games. I'd have to think with the 2 games in hand, they're going to come away with that division.
I just can't wait to see what happens. And I do like the Avalanche. I think they're probably going to win that division, but it's going to be really close. And I think it's interesting that Minnesota has been able to keep up without their best player in the lineup. You have Matt Boldy, who's just been on an absolute tear lately. He gets hat tricks left and right, apparently. He's scoring goals. It's so easy for him. And I think to have that player complementing Kaprizov when he comes back into the lineup, the Wild can make some damage in the playoffs. They have strong back-end play. They have strong 1-2 combo in goal. I mean, you could roll with Gustafsson or you could roll with Marc-Andre Fleury. You can't go wrong either way. And so I think they have the goaltending advantage of the 3 teams, in my opinion.
Did you see that little girl last night at the Minnesota Wild game, like cursing her head off, and the dad had to like shush her mouth?
No, but that's awesome.
She was like right behind the glass screaming at Brissois. I think she was dropping a couple F-bombs, and you just see the dad come in and cover her mouth. I'll get the clip for it, but it was so cute and so funny. I mean, we love seeing little kids kind of, listen, I'm a New Yorker, so if my kid's first word isn't fuck, there's going to be something wrong with that. But, I think it's great to see kids at hockey games, like, just being a part of the culture. And listen, I'm not encouraging cursing, but, some of my favorite memories as a kid were, going to the Garden, going to Nassau Coliseum and like hearing the fans chant asshole at the ref. Like that was just, the stuff that made me love hockey. So I thought it was great. If I were a parent, I probably wouldn't advise it, but I'm not. So.
When I was 5 years old, it was my first game in Boston. We went to see a Devils-Boston Bruins game, and the Devils ended up losing to the Bruins, but I got beer dumped on me. The Bruins fans were just sore winners, apparently. But
Not
like I
on
remember
purpose, I
that.
imagine.
Oh yeah, it was on purpose
Really?
for sure. Oh
That's
yeah,
crazy.
they didn't like Devils fans, but like that's the kind of memories where you're not thrilled in the moment, but it just like it's nostalgic and it's just like that's what happens when you're in a rink. You grow up in the rink and I've been to a bunch of different stadiums when I was younger, and it's just great atmosphere and it brings back a lot of childhood memories.
That is for sure. But now that story time is over, I think we should go into tonight's slate, a good NHL slate here on this Tuesday, April 4th. Not as many games tomorrow and another good slate on Thursday, but we're going to focus on the games tonight. So, Keith, what is your underdog bet for tonight?
So just to remind everyone, we do an underdog bet, a prop bet, a storyline bet, and then we finish off with our best bet of the night. So I'll go right into my underdog bet, which is the Chicago Blackhawks versus the Calgary Flames over 6.5 goals plus 110 odds right now. Both these teams have been kind of leaking defensively. You have Chicago, who's allowed at least 4 goals in their last 4 games. And then you have Calgary, who scored 5 goals in 3 of their last 4 games. Chicago has the lowest goals for per game this season, which kind of scares me a little bit taking this line. But as long as we get 1 to 2 goals from Chicago, I think Calgary is going to be able to pepper them tonight. Chicago's done. They're absolutely finished this year. And I'm just banking on them to get a couple goals to hopefully cash this. Markstrom's been a little leaky, so I think it's a good bet, and I think we're going to get some value tonight.
Yeah, I think that's a good bet as well. Probably not a game I'm going to watch. Calgary, though, is desperate to get into the playoffs, but I have no interest in that game with the other games that are on this slate. But I do think it's a good underdog pick, and I do see that over hitting. I mean, Calgary put up 5 the other night, like you said, in a pretty exciting game as well against Anaheim. So I do like this one a lot. I'm going to go into mine, and I actually love my underdog tonight. Like, I typically don't love the underdog plays, but I'm actually going to put a full unit on this, I think, because the Buffalo Sabres right now have won 4 out of the last 5. They're another team right now that's in the hunt in the playoffs. They're only 4 points out, but they have 2 games in hand. So the Sabres, like, I counted them out a week ago, but they're right there in it. I mean, they're 4 points back of Florida, 5 points back of Pittsburgh for that second wildcard spot. But this game is huge for both these teams because Florida can get back into the playoff spot with a win, and Buffalo can essentially jump Florida if they do win both those games in hand, if they win tonight as well. So it's a 4-point swing in this game, but Tage Thompson could be making his return. And essentially, I'm betting against Alex Lyon. I know in his last 3 starts, Lyon's been really good. He's 3-0-0 with a 1.33 goals against average and a .951 save percentage. He also had a shutout in one of those games. So he's been on fire, but his numbers for the season aren't that sustainable. This year, he's got a .899 save percentage. He's got a 3.24 goals against average and a -1.4 goals saved above expected. So he's due for some regression. So that's why I'm taking the Sabres. I think there's great value on them. I think it's a must win for both teams, which puts much more pressure on the home team, the Florida Panthers. So I love Buffalo, and I've loved Buffalo all year long. I did give up on them for a hot second, like I said, but I'm back in that Sabres train. I'm taking the Sabres tonight.
Yeah, you've been riding Buffalo a lot this year, which is great to see. Like they're a good story, they're a good team to feel good about. I do think that this line does have a little value. I'm not going to root for it. I'm not going to bet on it because I took the Panthers to make the playoffs when they hit plus 320 about a week ago.
Great
So I
bet.
got good value on that. Thank you. But the reason why I do like this for the Sabres is they're actually pretty good on the road this season. They're 22-11-3 on the road, which is one of the best road records in the NHL. So the Sabres as a road dog is something that I can endorse and get behind. And I think you're going to get some good value on this. These numbers should be closer to even too. The Panthers are 6-4 in their last 10, and the Sabres are 5-3-2. So they're both trending pretty similarly.
Levi's a stud. I actually covered one of his games when Northeastern played UMass a couple months ago, and he looked great against the Rangers in his debut. I love that celly with Jeff Skinner going skating over to him after he won in overtime. But yeah, this is gonna be a great game. Huh?
I said just that point immediately. As soon as Skinner scored it, just right to him.
That's awesome. Like that's one of the best.
Get that clip in here.
I will for sure. But I just think this is the game to watch tonight, also with the meaning behind it.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more in terms of both teams having playoff implications on the slate tonight than this game. But let's go right into my prop bet of the night. And it's the guy. It's Willie Stiles to score a goal against Columbus. Plus 142 on FanDuel. So remember when I was talking back about how FanDuel has 2 different markets for the same bet? This is minus 130 for anytime goal scorer, but over 0.5 goals is plus 142. So you're getting 15% value just taking the right market, which is insane to start. But Willie scores a goal in 51.3% of his home games this year. The average odds for this across books is plus 109. So the bookmakers clearly like him to score a goal tonight. He has 1 goal in 2 games against Columbus this year, but he has 11 shots in those matchups. He had 4 in one game and 7 in the other game. His shot on goal line is 3.5 at -110, which I like, but I think there's just more value on him to get the goal tonight. And we had Mitch Marner, who was rested for 2 days, and he's going to come back in the lineup. He's going to be looking to sauce Willie on the power play, and he's going to put one in the back of the net. And I just really like him to do this tonight.
I'd say he's due also. He's only got 1 goal in his last 5 games, and he's coming off a really bad game against Detroit where he was -4, but he had 4 shots on goal. And Nylander, one of those guys who's been one of the best goal scorers this season. He's got 37 on the year right there with Austin Matthews. So, yeah, I love this bet. I think he's due, and there's a lot of good value on it.
Exactly. I think your point of where sometimes I look at it and I'm like, if he's trending hot, is that a good reason to bet on him, or is he going to regress to the mean? And I think
I would sell high, baby.
Exactly. So I think he's trending low, so it's time to regress back to positive, and let's get this goal tonight.
Yeah, I love it. I'll ride that one too with you. That's a fun one. He's also an easy guy to root for. I love Willie Nylander. So
he's the best.
I'll go into my
prop for your night.
I feel like you can actually touch on it a little bit more because this is something that you usually take, but I'm going Connor McDavid over 3.5 shots on goal, which is -114 on FanDuel. He had 5 shots in his last game, but this to me is just a situational bet. Edmonton and LA right now are duking it out for first place in that division, like we talked about before, the Pacific Division. So I think right now Connor McDavid just has to, kind of put the team on his back and take over in a game like this against the Los Angeles team that is very good, and they are both familiar with each other after last year's playoff round. The Oilers are right there. They're 4 points back of the Golden Knights, so they could get first place, and this would be a huge win for them to get even closer to that. So I think this is a game where McDavid just has a ton of urgency and, is looking shoot first over pass first. And that's really it. No stats necessarily behind it. I feel like you can touch on the stats a little bit more with McDavid, but for me, this is just purely situational.
Yeah, I'm a huge Connor guy. That's like my hitter all season long. So anytime you put a bet on Connor, I'm going to love it. But going back to that Nylander trend when we're talking about buying low and selling high, McDavid's only hit this number in 4 of his last 10 games, but he's hitting it at 63% on the season. So he's due to kind of get hit back in that shot number. The one area of concern I have on this number is he's played LA 3 times, and he's only hit this number 1 out of those 3 games. So maybe that could be because LA centers kind of just lock him down with Deneau and Kopitar down the middle. Maybe they're just on him better. But at the same time, McDavid's better than any player in the world. He's going to be better than the best defenseman who's on him, and he's going to be able to break through. And like you mentioned, this is a huge game for the Oilers. He's going to be looking to shoot first. He's going to be looking for those passes from Draisaitl, who's arguably one of the best passers in the league, and he's going to hopefully pepper the net and hit this number for you. And I think the value's there. -114 seems like a good number for this.
I also think that's the other game that's must watch tonight. It's Panthers Sabres and this game on the West Coast. So that's one I'll definitely be tuning into.
100%. If I stay up late enough, we'll see.
Yeah. Some hockey guy you are. You're asleep at 10.
I know. I'm the worst.
All right, let's go into your storyline bet for tonight.
Let's hit my storyline bet. So this is a guy who we also talk about on the show a decent amount. We're going to go Mikko Rantanen to score a goal, -112 for his 50th goal of the season. He's going to become hopefully the 4th player tonight to get 50 goals on the season, joining David Pastrnak, Connor McDavid, and Leon Draisaitl. I want to bring up one point here. Nathan MacKinnon, for the most part, has been favored to score a goal more than Mikko Rantanen this year. And for whatever reason, I don't understand that. Nate has 4 goals on the year, a 0.53 goals per game average, but Mikko has 49 goals and a 0.65 goals per game. So it really makes no sense why, for the most part, you're able to get McKinnon now is -130, -135. So that doesn't make sense to me. But going back to Mikko, he scored a goal in his only game against San Jose this season. San Jose allows the 3rd most goals against per game on the year. The average odds across books is -137 for this bet. So you're getting about 5% value. And I think it's just exciting to root for someone to score 50 goals. They're going to be feeding him the puck tonight. They're going to beat San Jose pretty easily. So any empty net opportunities, they're probably going to give it to Rantanen. And he scored an empty net a couple nights ago. So I think there's just a lot of opportunities for his teammates to be looking for him to score the goal.
This is one of those things that you're going to do like you do with Pastrnak, where you just take him to score a goal every game until he hits 50, right?
Well, he's going to hit it tonight, so it's going to be the only game I do it for.
Yeah, I think it's a good bet. I mean, it's inevitable, right? Like he's going to get 50. It's just
and against San Jose, it's a team that has no one to stop him. Like, come on.
The season he's had, I mean, I think, like I said, it's just inevitable. So I like this play a lot as well.
Is he even in the MVP conversation?
How could you talk about an MVP right now besides?
I know. McDavid's like -7,000 to win the MVP. I get he's going to win it, but you have to have you have to have 3 finalists. There's got to be other guys in the conversation, even if they're basically in the conversation for second.
It's been a weird MVP year, I feel like, just because, I mean, McDavid has been so far and away from everybody else, but like, I think Pasternak and Jason Robertson should be up there. Kachuk obviously should be up there. So many teams have had so many different stories this season. The Bruins being so good at home and being so consistent all season. Colorado being very unhealthy all year and riding the back of Rantanen. Matthew Kachuk carrying Florida the last stretch here to get into a playoff position. Jason Robertson, how he started off the year. Tage Thompson. Like, there's been so many different players that have just done so many incredible things for their teams this year. So it's been definitely a more wide open, I think, MVP year. But then again, like, McDavid has just been so good the entire season that like nobody's even come close to him.
I know. I noticed most of those guys you just mentioned too, all American-born players. So we really love to
That
see
wasn't on
that.
purpose, I promise.
You didn't mention Jack Hughes either, by the way, who's also American.
Yeah, I mean, he could easily be, in that race too. And speaking of Jack Hughes, I'll just transition into my storyline bet tonight, which is the New Jersey Devils three-way. What'd you say?
I said that was amazing.
Yeah, thank you. The Devils three-way, and for those who still don't know, three-way means to win in regulation. That's kind of just the way you say it. But the Penguins are their opponent tonight. The Penguins is a huge game for them as they're sitting in the second wild card spot right now. But the Penguins are 1-5 in their last 6 road games, and they're 0-4 in their last 4 games against the Devils. The Devils are 9-1 in their last 10 games against the Metropolitan Division. So the Devils are kind of rolling right now, but they just had a stinker in Winnipeg. They lost, what was it, 6-1?
6-1.
Yeah, they lost 6-1 in Winnipeg on Sunday, so they're due for a strong bounce back. And the Devils have been really good this season after having a stinker. They're 5-1 in their last 6 games after allowing 5 goals or more in their previous game. So I do expect a strong bounce back from the Devils, and the Penguins are very weak on the road as well. So this game just leans all the way towards New Jersey, and I think the Devils could have done in 60 minutes. And I know you're going to agree with me, so let's hear it.
That was just a great nugget that you pulled out, the 5-goal one. I mean, I love when you pull those nuggets out for the boys. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree with you on this. The only concern I have is that both these teams are above league average in going to overtime. So the Devils have 20 overtime games this year and the Penguins have 19. The Devils are 3-0 against Pittsburgh this year, like you mentioned, and only one of those games went to overtime. So I think I like the Devils to kind of take care of business. The only concern I have is that Pittsburgh knows that they have to win this game. They know that they need 2 points here, so they're gonna scrap, they're gonna claw. But at the same time, they've known they needed 2 points in their last 6, where they're 1-5. So I think they're trending in the wrong direction, and I think the Devils have the better talent, and they're gonna get it done tonight.
Yep, for sure. And let's continue with the Devils because your best bet is I'm one of those guys.
Oh, it is. And it's my man, Mr. Teach Me How to Dougie Hamilton, over 3.5 shots at plus 110 on BetMGM. I think Dougie is finally back to his early to mid-season shooting self that he hasn't been at lately. He's hit this number in 6 of his last 10 games, averaging 3.9 shots on goal. Pittsburgh is the 4th worst in the league in allowing shots against to the defense position. And Dougie has 12 shots in his 3 games against Pittsburgh, and he averages 3.63 shots per game at home. I like Dougie to be peppering the net tonight, getting passes from Jack, passes from Timo, Nico, all the boys, and Dougie's going to hit this number tonight, and we're getting plus value on it, so it feels really good.
Yeah, I like it as well. Dougie Hamilton's another guy that's been kind of quiet in the Norris conversation, but he's pretty much up there. Like, he could be.
He's like a top 5, top 6 maybe in that conversation this year. I'm not saying he's going to be in the finalist of a top 3, but I think he's at least in the conversation.
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone's just been leaning toward Erik Karlsson. Like, how could you not?
I know.
But
it's a great comeback story too.
Dougie definitely deserves some recognition, but I'm going to go into my best bet, and that's the Vegas Golden Knights three-way, plus 105 on FanDuel. Sticking with the three-way bet once again. Both these teams are playing back-to-back games, second leg of a back-to-back, excuse me. The Golden Knights had a big win in Minnesota last night, and the Nashville Predators, who were my best bet last night to score under 2.5 goals, played in Dallas. So Nashville is missing some key players right now. They don't have a Yossi, they don't have Duchesne, they don't have Johansson, and they don't have Forsberg. So not many guys on that team can score goals right now, and they're pretty much out of the playoff race. They're 5 points back at Winnipeg. It seemed like they were creeping up a little bit, but they can't really mathematically get in there right now unless Winnipeg completely falls apart, and Calgary as well, who's also ahead of them. But Vegas is 4-0 in their last 4 trips to Nashville. So a huge game for Vegas. They got a lot of emotion after last night's win, and they're 25-7-6 on the road this year. So I'm going with the Golden Knights in regulation to win this game.
I love that both of these teams are coming off a back-to-back too, so you're dealing with the equal rest situation. And when you have that, then you want to look at the talent between the two rosters. And like you mentioned, Nashville has no one in their lineup. They're arguably 4 best players minus UC Saros are out right now. So how are they going to be able to contend with a team like Vegas who's streaking in the right direction? Like we said, they're 7-1-2 in their last 10 games. I think they get this done. I think they get it done in regulation. Both these teams are about league average in getting to overtime, but I think that this is a game that Vegas wants to win, and they have more talent to win this game. And if we saw Pavel Doreyev, I don't know how you say it, but that guy, he's going to be a wild card for Vegas in the playoffs. He had 2 goals last night. There was a lot of value. He was plus 360 to score a goal, and he got 2. So I think that number is going to come down. We might want to take him tonight, keep an eye on his number, but I like this play a lot, and I think this is going to win.
That's going to wrap up our bets for tonight's slate, but we're going to preview some games on Wednesday and on Thursday. Keith, you want to kick it off for Wednesday's game?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about this game. This is going to be probably the game of the year in terms of how much it matters this late in the season for playoff implications. We're going to have the Flames versus the Jets. The Flames play tonight. The Jets have a couple days of rest before they enter this matchup. So you're going to give the rest advantage to Winnipeg here. The Jets are 5-5 in their last 10 with a great win, like we mentioned, off against New Jersey on Sunday, 6-1. The Flames are 6-2 in their last 10 games. Hopefully they're going to win tonight, though. They're minus 450 favorites against Chicago. So that's basically saying they have an 85% chance to win, which is pretty guaranteed in this day and age. The season series, which I think is great, it's 1-1, and both of the games were 3-2 games. So maybe keep an eye on the under, as both these games were at 5 goals each. One goal scorer I'm looking at, though, for tomorrow is Tyler Toffoli. He's plus 144 today against Chicago, who's one of the worst teams at allowing goals this year. It should be probably higher with Connor Hellebuck in net in such a high-tension game tomorrow. I'm looking probably plus 170 to plus 180 range. Might even get up to plus 200. The good news is Tyler Toffoli has 33 goals on the season, and they'll be on the road tomorrow, where he scores 0.53 goals per game. So that's in line. I'm keeping my eye on it, and I'm just excited for this matchup. This means everything to both of these teams, and we're going to see who brings it and who kind of doesn't bring it.
Yeah, and I'm sticking with the under theme also. I'm looking at the Rangers and Lightning game. Obviously, a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Final, but the under is 7-0 in the last 7 meetings between these two teams, and it's 5-1 in the last 6 meetings in New York. So, everything trends towards the goaltending in this matchup. It's Andrei Vasilevsky versus Igor Shesterkin. Assuming those are the two at start in this game, I don't see why they wouldn't. This game doesn't necessarily have so much meaning to it, as Tampa Bay already knows they're going to play Toronto in the first round, although they might still try to get home ice, but the Rangers' fate is also pretty much secure, as they're pretty much locked up for that 3rd spot in the Metropolitan Division. So I don't think there will be a lot of desperation offensively between either team. So I think the goaltenders will shine, but I'm definitely leaning under when it's Andrei Vasilevsky versus Igor Shesterkin.
Yeah. Do you think that number will be at 6, or do you think it'll be a 5.5 number?
I think 6.
If you get 6, I really like that number. You'll probably get 6 at like minus 115, minus 120. And like you mentioned, this isn't a game where both these teams really want to go for it. They're not going to do too many risks. I think how they're going to look at it, and maybe I'm wrong, but they just want to get out of this game healthy. You have Lindgren back in practice, so he probably won't play this game, but at least he's getting back in the fold. And then, like you mentioned, it's just Durkin versus Vasilevsky. It's an Eastern Conference matchup from last year. It's going to be a great game, but where both these teams are in the standings, I don't think they're going to necessarily push the envelope to kind of go for it. So the under is a good idea here.
Agreed. Not many games Wednesday, but there's a lot more on Thursday. So let's go into the games on this coming Thursday.
We have a lot of great games in terms of the playoff implications for Thursday. The one I like the most is definitely the Kings versus the Golden Knights. Like we mentioned, how close that division is, and this game is a massive implication on who might be able to overtake the other team in this division. So I think that's going to be a matchup that I have my eyes on. But then you also have the Wild versus the Penguins, both in different kind of situations. The Wild kind of trying to get that top spot in the Central, and the Penguins still holding on for wild card spot, depending on how they do tonight against New Jersey, and also how the Panthers do. But then the Panthers play the Senators. We have Tkachuk versus Tkachuk again. I might parlay both of them to score a goal. Didn't hit last time, but Matthew had a bunch of shots and Brady scored, so maybe it hits this time. And then the Leafs and the Bruins. So that game isn't necessarily a big game for playoff implications because the Leafs are basically 2, the Bruins are 1, but it definitely could preview a second-round playoff matchup between these two teams if the Leafs finally get over the hump and make it to the second round.
Yeah, I mean, there's a game that you kind of left off there. Those are some pretty good matchups, like you said, but I'm looking at the Buffalo Sabres in Detroit. Obviously Detroit's pretty much out of it right now, but Buffalo, like I've talked about before, they're still in the hunt for the Eastern Conference playoffs. And if they win tonight, that game on Thursday is going to be huge, because if they win both the games they have in hand, they are right there neck and neck with the teams they're chasing in the Eastern Conference, the Penguins, the Islanders. So I'm watching Buffalo here in the last stretch of games. I think Buffalo could end up doing it. The Red Wings have been super cold lately, and they play Montreal tonight. So depending on how that game goes, I think Buffalo could be favored, not only favored on the road, but I would love Buffalo money line in this game in Detroit.
Yeah, I think Detroit, this is a get right game for Detroit tonight against Montreal. If they lose this game tonight, they're over. They have no self confidence anymore. Montreal basically has no players in their lineup. Half their team's on IR out for the season. So Detroit has to win this game. If they don't win this game, I look for Buffalo to be a pretty heavy favorite on Thursday and get the job done. So I think Buffalo is a team you want to root for as a team to make the playoffs over Pittsburgh and over Florida, just because they've been there, done that. And Buffalo is kind of the new trendy team to root for. So I'm definitely pulling for Buffalo and hope they kind of get the job done tonight and Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I've pretty much got for this week. Like we said, the weekend's going to be a little bit light. It's harder to bet on these games once the playoff standings are kind of solidified. So, I'm sorry that we won't have another show coming this weekend, but anything else to know before we kind of wrap it up?
No, I'm just excited to kind of watch these next few games in terms of all the playoff implications we have. Maybe not bet as much as we normally bet, but just watching as like a good hockey fan. And then as we kind of see how these seedings take out for the first round of the playoffs that start in less than 2 weeks, I think that's what's really kind of keeping my eye out on. And then me and Johnny also might have some good career news to announce on next Tuesday's episode. No spoilers though. We'll keep that under wraps until then.
Yeah, and hopefully my face is fucking healed by then because I'm in a lot of pain still right now. I'm going to go aloe up once we get off here. But thank you, everyone, for listening. And let us know, as always, if you're riding our picks because we love to see it on Twitter and we love to win some money together. So let's go fucking make some money.